being a police officer allows me, or it gives me the stage that I need to be able to speak to kids, young black kids, white kids too. But I'm gonna be honest again. I love speaking to young black kids because young black kids, those are the ones who need it. They need that education, and who better to give that education about life and how to live and how to do right than a black male who's experienced some of the things that they've experienced. Um, and one thing about this stage, even if you don't want to listen to me, you have to. And so if you have to, that means I have a responsibility to make sure that when I'm speaking to you, that it's me speaking life into you.
Spit that shit out, man! That's on flip script.
So I was just saying, you came on my radar through not really a mutual acquaintance, but just somebody who we're mutually aware of in local journalist Ira Schoffel.
Okay. Right. Okay.
He retweeted something that you had sent out, and it kind of caught my eye, and I checked out your Twitter profile, and then just some of the things that you put out there in the world caught my attention, and I thought I'd roll the dice and see if you were interested in coming on the show and talking to us about your experience, and you were generous enough to agree. And I wanted to tell you, there's two things you sent out that really kind of caught my eye.
Okay.
One was you wrote, "When I suit up and jump in the whip, I'm repping for the black, brown, white, and blue."
Right.
And the second one was, "This is the best job in the world, especially when you know why you do it."
Exactly.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the one about repping the different colors is for obvious reasons, right? It's because when you put this badge on, you put this uniform on, and you wear this gun, you have to understand the responsibility that comes with it. You don't get to pick and choose who you serve. You know, you get into this job because you want to serve everybody. And people come in different shades, different cultures, and you have to understand that everybody matters, including us, the officers. You know, so, I mean, lately in the world, it seems like people have put the color blue, meaning police officers, into a whole race category by itself, and that's not fair. As if we're not human. I don't like it. I don't agree with it. So that was my way of just letting everybody know, hey, I'm trying to do this job the best way I can. I'm trying to do this job from my heart, and we all matter. We're all humans, no matter what we wear, no matter what we look like.
And Justin, I think that's really awesome and profound, and I'm glad you said it, because I've been trying to say things of that nature for a while on the podcast with all the controversy going on. And did you happen to see that video in Portland of the black police officer who was speaking with a black woman who was protesting? And then this.
No, I did.
Yeah, well, he's sitting there having this conversation on the line, and you know, by all appearances, it was civil, and they were having a chat. And some white lady comes up and pulls her away. And,
really?
and this cop gets on you know, it was, I think, Twitter or social media. He's like, how arrogant is that? What hubris for her to be, you know, I'm having a conversation with this lady. And, you know, so I don't mean to segue off, but I just think, I guess what I'm saying is I agree with you that there's a lot of generalization, and just wanting, the easy thing to do is to put cops or law enforcement writ large in a silo and say they're all the same. It's bad. It's racist, and it's terrible. And it's like, I don't like that. I don't like that either.
I hate it. It's almost as if people are looking at us as if we're subhuman or something.
Yeah.
You know, and that's completely not fair. It's tough to do this job. I'm not asking for sympathy, right? I'm not doing that. I'm saying in reality, it really is tough to do this job. We're making split-second decisions out here. We're making just tough decisions in general. And all we want is we're just asking the public, hey, just realize that and find a way to just understand and empathize with us.
And maybe have everybody just calm down when there's an incident and let the system unfold and see, hey, this was a legitimate officer involved shooting, or this was not. I mean, that's kind of one of the biggest bees in my bonnet about all this is that, and I guess it happens everywhere. I mean, you know, as humans, everybody sees a viral video that they don't know this, you know, all the details of, and then it's off to the races. Like who said it? Mark Twain, or I forget who said. Maybe Bertrand Russell said that the truth, or a lie makes itself around the world 10 times before the truth can even put its pants on in the morning.
Right, and I get that. You know, with all of this, I don't want people to think that I'm so pro law enforcement that I don't understand their thoughts and understand their views. I get it. What we do in law enforcement, it's not pretty. There's some, you know, we can hug some teddy bears, kiss babies, you know what I'm saying, 50% of the time. But the other 50%, it's an ugly job. It's an ugly job. I always kind of think about football. Football is a sport that is not pretty. You know, it's a rough and tough job. It's a rough and tough game. When two people collide, it's just not pretty. When we go out there and do this job, there's going to be some people who are tossed on their head. It's going to be some women who get manhandled sometimes by men, police officers. But you know what? We have to understand that it's a necessary evil. And we have to be okay with that. But I also, as a police officer, I understand that when you look at that as a citizen who is uneducated in anything that we do, it's going to look bad and you're going to feel a certain type of way. So as a human being who's wearing this badge, I have to understand that and try to take the time to educate and listen to you.
That's an interesting way to put it, Justin, that, you know, clearly those of us who are civilians don't quite understand what it looks like day to day when it's your job in large part to deal with aspects of society that for one reason or another might be broken.
Right.
And at the same time, you know, the past year has been so heightened and emotional and powerful that it seems like many citizens are expressing a frustration with law enforcement in one way or another that does have a core of legitimacy. And so how do we find the balance of people crying out and saying, we're concerned about this, we're fed up with this, and at the same time, law enforcement people saying, we're dealing with what's broken in society to keep you safe. We are the line that separates. You know, how do we find that balance in hearing both of those voices? I guess is what I'm saying. Like hearing what you're saying. Hey, you guys are human, and you're doing a tough job. And then hearing other voices that are saying, we don't feel like we're being treated fairly. Which is interesting, man, because I was just saying before you called, I can understand why an African-American police officer might consider it a lose-lose to come on and talk to us about this, because you could potentially be seen as betraying one tribe or another, depending on what you say, your professional tribe. And then if people say, you know, you're a black male in America, right? How do you feel about that?
You know, I think there's a level of arrogance in me that feels like I can explain anything to anybody and they'll just understand probably. And that's probably stupid to think like that. But, you know, I love God, you know, and I believe that God put me on earth to do this job. And, you know, and I believe he put me on earth to do this job a little different. One of my favorite parts of this job is just simply taking the time out to educate people when I'm working the street. As police officers, understanding that civilians, the public, they're frustrated with us. This is the opportunity. This is our opportunity to step out in front of them and do the best job that we possibly can to educate on why we do what we do. But at the same time, at the same time, the public has to be willing to come to the table and listen.
I was just going to say, I love that sentiment, but unfortunately, sometimes there's just a tsunami, and that desire to try to have a conversation about it just gets just drowned.
Right.
So how do you do it? How do you approach it, Justin, in terms of when you're on the job? How do you educate? How do you approach that?
One of my favorite things to tell people is, you know what, when I'm putting handcuffs on people, I take the time out to say, hey, I'm doing this because of this. You have to take those small moments in time to just really get in some education. But it starts with treating people like they're human first. Because if you don't treat a person like they're human, if you don't treat a person like they are alive and like they're worth something, they won't even take the time out to listen to you. So when you get on scene, you're not coming on scene and talking to people out of the way. You're coming on scene explaining why you're there. Somebody called us. This is why we're here. We didn't just show up. And then you're talking to them with respect. You're giving them the opportunity to learn. And once you have that, then they'll listen. And then that gives you more opportunities to educate while you're doing what you're doing. I tell people all the time, even when people are in handcuffs in my back seat on the way to the jail, I take time to preach to them. I say, I know you don't want me to preach to you, but I'm going to preach to you anyway. And I always try to, just speak life into them and tell them this can be the last time that you have to be in the backseat of a police car. You actually have to just care. It's just simply caring. That's it. Care.
That's one of the keys, I think. And we all know that there are abuses at all levels in law enforcement, just like every other profession. But showing that respect, and not only is it just the right thing to do, but you can police better when you show respect. You get, I've arrested people who have said, "Hey, I never resist with you guys, with the FBI in this case." He said because this was a long time ago. He was already sort of reformed, and he was doing a book signing. So he said back in the day, he said I had my ass beat by every police department from Philadelphia to San Francisco, and he said so I always fight because I'm ready for a fight. But he said whenever you guys, the Bureau, and I'm not holding us over anybody else. It just this was this guy's experience. He said you've always treated me professionally, firmly, but professionally. And so I just hold my hands out and say, put the cuffs on. Let's go. Time to go to jail.
Right. And I was going to use the word professional because it's just professionalism.
Right.
Oftentimes, though, as a street cop, let's say, versus an FBI agent, you're coming up on highly emotional, angry scenes regularly, right?
Right. Yep.
And so it's not just, I guess it's a different, I love what you're saying about showing up, explaining why you're there, explaining that somebody called. But if you're coming, if you're showing up into a nuclear bomb of human anger and emotion, sometimes I guess you've got to try to make sense of that and get that under control before you can sit down and have a chat about why you're there.
So true. So true. So it's the ugly part. You come into a scene and everybody's yelling at each other, and cussing each other out. It's time to be the police. It's time to be the police. It's time to raise your voice, show your authority. But once you de-escalate it, your voice has to de-escalate too, right? It has to come down. As a professional, you have to recognize when it's time to be the police and when it's time to be a human being.
Justin,
I know I'm separating the two like it's two different things, but I hope you understand this. You have to show your authority. That's part of your job. You have to be the mean guy sometimes.
And that makes everybody safer when you like you said, you have that professional posture. It's not just, hey, I'm your neighbor chit-chatting with you now. Right. This situation needs to be contained.
Right.
Justin, I love that you use the word de-escalate because as a frustrated civilian who knows nothing about being a cop, I have been thinking over the last few weeks, trying to figure out anything that I can do as a civilian that could actually help make a difference or make an impact. And one of the ways where I think that there can be great compromise is de-escalation training. And I know that de-escalation training is required in some states, and in other states, I believe in Florida, it's not required at all. But I know that a couple months ago, there was a bill that was introduced to require de-escalation in different police forces. And so it sounds like you're already employing a lot of the tactics that are required in that training. And so my question for you is, have you received any hours of de-escalation training? And if not, what do you feel about that as as something required for police forces and police officers across the nation?
Well, let me think before I just say no. I don't want to say the wrong thing. There's a good chance I probably will say the wrong thing. As far as de-escalation training, I don't think we've received specific de-escalation training, and I agree that we should. Mm-hmm. And as far as me using it, it's life experiences, and I guess let's be real here. Being a Black police officer allows me to come onto a scene or deal with people much differently than it would a white police officer.
Can you explain that a little bit?
Okay, and that's nobody's fault necessarily. It's just where you grow up, how you grow up, who you grow up with. If you grow up with a lot of the people or the types of people that you police on a regular, because I work on the Black side of town. I've worked on the northeast side of town and the northwest side of town, which are two different types of areas from where I currently work. But I went to school in the Black community, elementary school, middle school, high school. I went to an HBCU. So I deal with people who look like me. I've been dealing with them all of my life. So obviously, it's given me a skill set that allows me to empathize, sympathize, and just deal with people who look like me a little differently.
And do you think your colleagues have that skill set?
I don't think it's just because I'm Black. I am able to deal with it a little bit better. I believe a white police officer who grows up in the same environment can too. I believe a white police officer who doesn't grow up in the same environment, there's a possibility that he can too. You know, it's the person. It's the person's heart. You know, I can't call it, but I would say on a higher percentage of Black police officers who obviously grow up in Black communities, they're going to deal with the Black community different. It's just a natural thing.
We're talking about communication. It sounds like mostly, and maybe not just just verbal, but where you're coming from, like where you're standing when you're trying to communicate with somebody and understanding.
Right. And if you don't understand the culture that you're dealing with, that you're trying to police, it's going to be almost impossible for you to relate. Right. I mean, you can't relate with something that you know nothing about. And I don't know, that's not your fault. You know, it's just the way it is.
And it's just a challenge that all police departments will have to address, as Britt would say. Wouldn't you say so, Justin?
I would definitely say so. Yeah. You know, and I question sometimes in my own head, is it something that you can train people to do?
Right.
You know? It may not be. We don't know the answer to that. You know, it's just we're all human beings, you know, and we learn as we grow. And we have to be okay with the fact that some people just will never understand. But what we need to do as police officers and as people in general, we just have to learn how to get along and allow people to make mistakes. So,
and what do you mean by what do you mean by that? Allow people to make mistakes? Justin,
well, you first recognize that you're dealing with human beings. They're not going to be perfect. They are going to do things that you're not going to like. I'm not even talking about just police officers. I'm talking about just people in general. They're going to do things that you're not going to like, you're not going to agree with. But if you don't take the time out to understand their train of thought, why they did what they did, you're not going to allow them to give a good explanation as to why they did what they did, then you'll never ever understand or or allow them to be human. I hope I'm making sense.
Yeah, I think you are I think you are, Justin, and it was like and someone who I like, Sarah Silverman. She has a podcast, and I saw her, and I think she's talented and funny. She seems smart as well. But she was there was the incident where the female officer grabbed her gun instead of her taser, and Sarah Silverman says, "Do you expect us to believe that person didn't notice the different color of the taser, didn't notice the grip, didn't notice the weight, and didn't notice that it didn't have a safety?" My answer to all those questions is yes, you are supposed to understand that. Let's have a conversation in that heated moment. I mean, why that mistake can happen, but I can believe that as a mistake, and furthermore, to show the lack of understanding, that cop had a Glock 17 that doesn't have a safety. So,
exactly. See, small things like that,
right?
I wouldn't call that a small thing when it involves the murder of somebody, though. There's a difference between making a mistake as a police officer and roughing somebody up when you're not supposed to or when it's inappropriate, and making a mistake and killing somebody. That's a whole different level.
Right. And the small thing I was referring to is just the fact that the Glock 17 doesn't have a safety. That's what I was referring to.
Small details that somebody like us or Sarah Silverman wouldn't understand.
Sure.
And so you add up those small details and you can add up like
a completely different narrative.
Right.
That was my point too. All those details matter. And what Justin's saying is we need to be able to have a conversation with each other and not have the cops shout it down because something looks terrible on video or social media at first blush.
Right now, should that police officer be held accountable for the death of that person? Yes. It's a mistake that she made that cost that kid his life. But we still need to have a conversation with that cop to understand her train of thought. Yeah, we there's some obvious things that we see. She called out taser, taser, taser. She pulled out the gun and pulled the trigger. That's obvious. But we still need to be able to sit down with her, have a conversation, get into her head, and really learn why she did what she did, how that mistake was made. Because I think that's important in terms of how that person is punished for that mistake. If we just simply go off the fact that she pulled the trigger on a gun versus a taser, I don't think that's fair. But that's just my opinion, because we have to understand that this job is hard. This job requires you to make split-second decisions.
With a massive amount of adrenaline flowing, not just in the police officer, but also in this case, the victim, because she, you're right. This cop needs to be held accountable, but it's not like murder one. When she killed somebody, she made a mistake, but it wasn't like she went in there intentionally with bad motives. I mean, when she's yelling taser, 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 she's saying for people to get away so that they don't get shocked along with the person she's trying to control. I mean,
right.
So,
I'm not the judge, nor am I the jury. And I would never, ever want to be in a position where I have to decide this woman's fate. But I just think it's unfair to her and to every other police officer out there who comes after her who makes that mistake. Because it's happened before. It's not like it's the first time it's happened. No, it's going to happen again.
And that's and that's why it's a different color and it's a different grip and all that stuff, because it does happen. And with the adrenaline coursing through your veins, the mind, is gonna make mistakes. They're, like you said, we're human beings. Street police people, men and women are human beings, and that's the nature of the job. Mistakes are going to happen. Now, you can minimize those by training, time on target, repetitions, scenario training, and we have to do that. But guess what? The woke mob is screaming, defund the police. When what we need is, what's the first thing that gets cut in the budget when municipalities, even the federal government, I saw it, and training. For a while, I ran a training unit, and training goes away. So it seems to me, it feels to me, and it seems to me intellectually, like the mob wants to just scream, defund the police. When I know street policemen who don't have enough money in their budgets to put gas in their cars. And it's like, so they want to they want to cut funding for mental health, for addiction crises, for family counseling. Cut the budget, dump all of the broken issues out onto the street, and then say, "Here, there you go, street police person, deal with it."
Okay, but for the sake of this conversation, I say we don't talk about the quote-unquote woke mob again, because the woke mob, the far left, who is so antagonistic to any police incident, they don't want to hear the details, like you say, Justin. They don't want to give the police officer due process. They're not in the room right now. You know, I would say it's fair that AJ and I represent the civilians who recognize that there's a problem, very, very concerned about it, but we don't have that immediate antagonism towards police officers every time we see that there's a mistake. But we really do want to know if there's a solution that's viable, that works between there. When I see an incident, I just feel, as a civilian, I feel helpless. And I wish there was something I could do. Do I want to defund police departments? No. Do I want to vote on bills that require de-escalation training? Sure. And that's just where I think we should focus this discussion. So, Justin, it sounds like earlier you were saying that you feel like some police officers just are not getting their due process. And I don't even necessarily mean that legally. I mean that there is so much vitriol spewed towards the headlines, right? We read the headline that some cop accidentally shot a guy when she meant to tase him. And I see this in my circle of progressive friends. They immediately scoff and they start talking scornfully and angrily. And all of a sudden, what you want to do, have a discussion and educate, it's off the table because the judgment has already been passed.
Right.
But what we're seeing on the civilian side is, it feels to us, and we may be wrong because the media might be stressing this, it feels to us like there's an increase of police brutality or mistakes or aggression towards people of color. From you, from the police officer side of it, do you feel the same way? Or do you recognize that? Or do you think that the media might be overblowing it?
I wish I knew the stats so I could say something factual.
Right.
But I don't. And as a police officer, I don't feel like it's increasing. No, I don't feel like it's increasing. It's so hard, especially being a black guy as a police officer, working in the black community, when the majority of the stuff I deal with as a police officer, the people I deal with are black people. Honestly, I don't know, Britt.
Well, you know, part of the problem, Justin, is that there isn't enough data out there, and that's changing. In 2019, there's a bill that was passed that, you know, starts to mitigate that problem, starts to increase the data around all these issues. And so I think, you know, we're on the right track. Once that initial batch of data comes in, and I think it's starting to come in and get properly analyzed, then they'll see if they're getting some of these answers, and if they're not, they'll fine tune it. But I think we're on the right trajectory with getting the data that you talked about to be able to make sensible decisions about trends and trajectories and things like that. So
that's a really good point, Marty. And I like, Justin, that you both said the data. You know, you guys want to look at the numbers and the stats, and because we don't have that, you know, statewide collectively, what we're relying on is the energy of the people and the energy of the media, and that sometimes matters just as much as the data or the stats.
Well, it matters in crafting the narrative, for sure.
But wouldn't it be nice if, instead of relying only on the energy, we were able to rely on the statistics as well?
For sure. I mean, you just anecdotally, I can name 3 or more African American people who have been shot by the police in the last year and a half. I can't name a single Hispanic. I can't name a single white person, and that's not because it hasn't happened. They just aren't stories.
They're not in the headlines.
They're not stories. And so that, in my mind, does that start to create a narrative where I subconsciously think, oh my God, it's only happening to black people. It's only happening to black people. Even if I know better intellectually, does it start to affect my emotions? And why is the media covering that and not the other? Because the other is just not going to get people as angry. And right now, you know, like we often say, the media's job is not to give us the truth. The media's job is to sell advertising. That's their bottom line.
I made a post on Twitter recently about the news and the media. I mean, you got to understand that the truth is somewhere in between. They're not going to give you everything, right? You have to be able to go out there and do a little bit of research yourself to find the actual truth. Because the media is only going to give you what they can sell, you know. And I hate talking about the media in that way because, you know, that the media is necessary. We need the media. We need news. But at the same time, you got to understand that the media is in it to make money. So,
well, yeah, and the media is. I don't see you blaming the media. It's all of us because the media is only selling what we're buying, and we're buying outrage, but we're not buying due process and thoughtful conversations.
Yep. And yet I do want to point out that the outrage, and you guys know this, the outrage is coming from somewhere, right? Because we can talk about the data on police shootings and things like that, but something we're never going to get data on probably is somebody just getting harassed a little too much when they're pulled over. And
right.
And we've talked about this before on the show, Justin. You know, none of us have any doubt that when a black person gets pulled over, it's a different experience than when I get pulled over or Britt gets pulled over.
Right.
You know, Marty's even said that law enforcement people he knows who are black feel nervous when they get pulled over. And we all know you guys aren't going to get a ticket, you know.
I wouldn't confirm or deny that.
Yeah, right. But, you know, so it's important for all of us to acknowledge that there are experiences with law enforcement, with people of color, and specifically with black people in this country that it's not going to get captured by data, but it's part of the experience and part of the frustration. And I think a friend of mine recently said that she feels like right now nationally, you know how you have the 7 steps of, the 7 steps of dealing with something? First you have denial and then anger and...
the 7 processes of grief.
Yeah, the 7 processes of grief. She feels that societally we're going through those processes and we're in the anger process right now. We're in the anger step where everyone's just angry and exploding. And it made a lot of sense to me, but it also worried me because then societally, how do you get out of that anger process when you also mix in a media that's tweaking it versus an individual who will work out of it or not on their own? As a society, we could get stuck somewhere in the anger process.
Right. We're feeding the anger right now. The anger is consistently being fed and it's getting stronger and bigger. How do we get out of something that's just consistently growing?
Do you see it on the street?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can drive down Orange Avenue here in Tallahassee and kids just routinely just flick me off for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was going to ask you. Do you receive prejudice and antagonism towards you as a police officer?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
Is that new or have you always?
So?
Sorry, bro.
Not always, but it's more now. I mean, one thing I truly hate is when I go on the scene and the first thing out of somebody's mouth is the C word or Uncle Tom or y'all ain't gonna do nothing. Y'all don't never do nothing. Y'all just want to shoot us. Don't tase me, bro. This silly stuff, right? And that's all because of what's being fed in the media. You know, yes, we know that black men are being shot by police. We know that. But for the media to put it out there the way they're doing it, they're just feeding the anger that you spoke of. They're feeding it, and it makes our jobs harder. So instead of us having the time to learn from our mistakes, we're consistently being attacked, and it's causing more problems, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, how do you, with that, I can't imagine the stress that constantly being in defense mode must put upon you on your job.
I mean, that's the way you just said that, being in defense. Yes, that's so true, but it's something I don't think about, but you're always on the defense before you can even have the opportunity to just go out and do your job.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you always have to defend who you are, why you are, and what you're doing. And if you spend more time doing that, then you're never really getting down to the root problem and solving issues because everybody just wants to attack you.
Yeah, and I think the data will be as it comes in, and as it's tweaked, it will be more geared towards the experience you've had with a law enforcement officer. I mean, companies do this all the time, but it's just got to be. It's going to be an evolutionary process.
Yeah, we keep saying data, but I propose the question: does my community will we trust the data?
That I was just thinking that.
Yeah.
I mean, no, I don't. As important as stats and data is, I think it's deeper than that. We don't, whatever's put out there, we're not going to trust it. We're not going to care because all we're going to think about is what we see on the news.
That's right. And if people see data that they don't like, that doesn't stroke their worldview already, that's what we do now. We don't trust it.
Right. Because you don't know where that data comes from. You can put it at the top where the data came from, but nobody's ever going to really pay attention to that because they don't understand how that data was actually accumulated.
I would only say to that, I agree with you, but it's a long process. And as that data comes in, then police training can sort of evolve with that. And then you're just going to have better experiences in the community. Yep. And then there's going to be fewer incidents. It's a long-term process to get out of this cycle of anger that AJ speaks about. So
this is why I think AJ hit on the right point earlier. Everybody's so focused on the shootings and the deaths. They're focused on the most extreme of problems. And I feel like if we focused right away on the traffic stops, the de-escalation training, the small microaggressions, the small moments of racism that really matter, that build up that resentment towards police officers, if that could be prioritized and focused on, I think that is what would instigate change probably quicker.
Yep. I mean, one of the easiest ways to do that to me is get into a lot of these high schools, even middle schools. And I'm a big believer that if we do that, then we're catching the hearts and the minds of these young kids before they even have the opportunity to drive and get out here and be adults. You have the opportunity to change the perception of policing in America if you get to these kids as early as possible. And the best way to do that is when they're all together at school. At least offer the class as an elective how to basically behave when you encounter the police. Why you shouldn't be afraid and why you should take the opportunity to, take in that moment with an officer and learn. Why won't we do that? Why won't we make that simple step and implementing this stuff into schools?
So is this something that you're suggesting or something that you're already practicing in your area?
Suggesting.
Yeah.
We're not doing it. We should do it. I actually spoke of this on my Facebook page one day, and a local female deputy, she was a sergeant at Leon County Sheriff's Office. She said that, I think she said they proposed it with Leon County schools, and it may have been shot down. I'm not sure. I don't know what happened, but she had actually had that idea too. So to me, it's just a common sense thing, because I spoke earlier about it. Education. People will treat you differently when they understand you and what you do. They will know why the trigger was pulled. They will know why they got pulled over by 3 police officers instead of 1. They will know why when those 3 police officers got out of their car, they pulled their rifles and their pistols instead of just walking up to the car. They don't know why you did that. Of course they don't hate you. Nobody wants a gun pointed at them. Nobody wants to be yelled at and told what to do. So educate the people so they understand why you did what you did.
And that comes back to funding again.
It does. It comes back to money.
And Britt properly focused me. I was getting a little passionate when I, threw out the woke mob, but it is personal to me when I hear the defund the police narrative, because it shouts out. But yeah, it comes down to money, and it comes down to training and education, all the things that you just mentioned.
How much money does it take to get 2 police officers to visit a middle school?
They already do. In many areas.
Well, the thing is, you're taking a police officer off the street.
But what Justin's recommending is more than what they do now. My daughter's in middle school, and she just got visited by the the hot guys. What am I thinking?
Fireman?
Thank you.
The hot guys.
No.
Come on now.
No.
Justin, can you believe that?
Justin, I'm sure you're a handsome dude.
Justin's a
but
good looking man. I'm about
I'm
to show Britt
sorry.
a picture.
I was
I'll
gonna
take
say
a
the
fireman
FBI
over a cup any day.
Justin's a good looking man.
I was going to say the FBI guys, but I don't have everybody against me.
But if he, yeah, okay. Anyway, but they do often come into the schools, but it's more like, here's a sticker, here's what we do, here's how we're part of the community. I love what Justin's recommending, not just here's how to behave at an incident, but so many of us don't know our rights. We don't know what we're allowed to do and not to do. And so if cops came in and said these are your rights, and this is, and then this is what you're required to do by law, how different would that change the process?
There's a guy I ran across on TikTok this morning that's doing exactly this. It's concealed weapons training, but he's taking it from the perspective of when you're pulled over, you're approached by officers. Here's why they have their hand on their gun. Here's why the partner's on the other side of the car. Here's what they're reading from you. And I'll send, including you, Justin, I'll send all you guys, when we're done recording, the link to this guy's TikTok. It's so informative. And he's got a room full of people, which the videos that I watched, it was a room full of African-American people who were in this concealed weapons training who are like getting their minds blown by how quickly an officer can be in a position of danger and how much he doesn't know. And so why he's reacting the way he's reacting. And it and that's obviously more down the line in violent situations when you're talking about concealed weapons and what can happen.
Well, you also,
but what you're saying, Justin, is go into the schools and kind of explain the nitty gritty of, hey, here's what we're going. Here's what happens when you get pulled over or you get approached. Here's what the police officer is looking at and scanning for and thinking and reacting to. And that's not to put the onus all on, somebody could easily say, oh, so it's the black male's fault that they got shot. No, that's not what people are saying. But the more, you can either choose ignorance or you can choose more education and more information. And I would want more information, kids to have more information as to here's what these transactions look like. It's transactional.
But also in an overarching way, it humanizes the police as well. When they
go into the school.
To go into the schools. And that's huge in my mind.
Especially if it's someone like you, Justin, who's like, hey man, I was you guys. I grew up here. I am you. I'm still you. Right? It's not. I use that all the time. Right. It's not someone, some Scottish guy like Marty walking in can be beneficial, but also it could be easily to tune out versus someone who's from the same area.
Yep. Exactly. I use it all the time. I listen, I'm going to use my skin color as a police officer to the day I retire. It's a tool. It's a tool. And going back to the traffic stop, when I think of going into the schools, the traffic stop training is by far in itself one of the most important pieces of this curriculum, this imaginary curriculum that I have thought up in my head.
Yeah.
It's as simple as when I walk up to the driver's side of a car, before I can even get any words out, the woman is asking, why you pull me over? And then I say, can I have your driver's license, insurance, and registration? Why you pull me over? And then it's my job at that point to educate her on why I haven't told her why I pulled her over yet. And it's as simple as, hey, policy in my department says get the license first, then explain why you stopped. And once I tell them that, it all changes. Simply because I took the time out to give her that one little piece of education or information. Now what I've done is I've taken it off of me and I put it on my department selfishly. But you know what? It allows that traffic stop to go a lot smoother and she don't hate me no more because I'm wearing blue.
Justin, I want to ask you about this. There's a few towns, I apologize, I don't know if it's in America or if it happened in England, that have started to implement a policy and training where police officers no longer do a majority of the traffic stops. They've created and assigned it to a different unit that's now doing traffic stops. So police officers focus on, more criminal activity. And they're the main reason they're doing that is because of what's been going on this last year and ever since George Floyd, to try and limit all of the perceived problems that have been happening with traffic stops. What do you think about that?
So that's interesting. So that unit is the only unit within that police department that does the traffic stops, is what you're saying?
They just do traffic stops. So if it's a taillight issue, or if it's a expired registration tag, it's no longer the cops with the guns that are pulling them over. It's a completely separate unit.
That's interesting, because now that unit can be trained specifically on traffic stops, and they don't have to be overwhelmed with a whole lot of the other police issues, I would assume. And now we can focus on how to be human on that traffic stop, what to say when this happens, and things like that. So maybe, the interaction between the police officer and the citizen, it's a lot better. I like it. But the problem goes back to, how do we fund that unit? Like, where do we get the bodies to do it? That's the problem. That's one of the deeper problems in American policing right now, is the fact that nobody wants to be a police officer. And this was before the whole Black Lives Matter thing. We were losing people left and right. Now, with the current environment, we definitely can't get anybody.
Yeah, I was thinking that when I was thinking, how do we get the younger Justin Hills to want to be police officers?
Justin Hill's pretty young, man.
But yeah, he's young and good looking. But how do we get younger and even better looking Justin Hills?
Well, that's I in that traffic stop thing. I mean, I think it's a great idea to talk about, but I've got some questions. So that unit, I mean, they pull somebody over and say that person has warrants. Mm-hmm. Then, is it all? I mean, then
they bring in the cops.
But that person that has warrants knows that their cops are coming, and then is that person in danger now, because they know that this unarmed person, I can get away right now because this guy's not going to stop me.
So I guess I misunderstood something from the beginning. Then I didn't realize that it wasn't a police officer doing the traffic stop.
Is it an armed police officer doing, or is it someone who's not armed at all?
To the best of my knowledge, they're not armed, and I don't even know if they're cops.
Definitely, it's definitely England.
It's the same.
They're not sworn police officers.
It's the same idea that a few towns are implementing of bringing in the social workers first when there's a mental health crisis, instead of bringing in the cops first, right? And then as soon as they sense danger, then they might call the police. But the social worker would be called in first to help the person with a mental health crisis.
Okay, so I'm not a big. I'm not big on that one, because you're always in danger on a traffic stop until you can determine that you're not in danger on a traffic stop. You have to treat it like every person has a gun.
Why is that?
Because they might have a gun and they might not like you on that day, and they might use that gun.
Huh.
That doesn't mean that you get to treat them disrespectfully, though. That doesn't mean that you get to treat them like they're like their life doesn't matter. It's just that you always have to be aware. And so if you put just a regular Joe Blow who has traffic stop training, but he's not a sworn police officer, on a traffic stop, and he has a warrant, it could go bad really quick. Because now the bad guy who's behind the driver's seat has the advantage, because he has the gun. The non-sworn police officer who pulled him over doesn't. We at least want the person who pulls people over to have a way of protecting themselves. And that's not ugly. That's not nasty. That's not bad. That's just, to me, common sense. You want to be able to protect yourself when you go out there and you deal with people who may be bad.
And for me, it always comes back to before we start forming without really thinking these things through. And I don't mind the sort of beta testing or process of it. It's just we have to have a larger conversation. And for me, it's simpler and cheaper and more effective to just train police officers more and more and more on de-escalation, on the things that they need to do instead of putting social workers in jeopardy, which has happened. And I've read some instances, and it's anecdotal, of people sending social workers out and they end up getting injured or killed.
Maybe part of that too comes from, like, on the civilian side, because it'll make the local news. It really doesn't make the national news. How often police officers are shot, killed, or harmed during traffic stops. That it is actually, tell me if I'm wrong or not, is it actually a dangerous situation. Like you're saying, you have to assume somebody has a gun, because if you don't, and then they do,
Well,
you're flat-footed.
Justin further explained that assumption word and turned it into awareness. You have to be aware
Right.
that you could be possibly in grave danger at every
Right.
traffic stop. He's not saying approach them like they have a gun. He's saying just
Right.
be aware that that's a possibility and be professional, right?
Right, because if you start approaching everybody like they have a gun, then this is gonna go bad quickly.
Right.
Yeah.
CNN would be all over that every day.
Yeah, I knew
We're
what you
not doing
meant. I knew what you meant.
Right.
You clarified later and said just awareness and professionalism.
Right.
But I think I think everybody's just trying to find ways to make this work and take some of the smaller clinical work off the police officers' hands. So why assume my sister's been driving around with, well, maybe I won't say my sister, somebody I know has been driving around with expired registration tags for over a year. She is not a threat. She just can't get around to picking up that piece of mail. Why do we have the trained police officers trained to deal with criminals dealing with expired registration tags?
Is it because oftentimes people who are also up to criminal activity haven't bothered to renew their registration tags or register their gun, or, people who are living within the black market, let's say, a big umbrella, a criminal market, then also they're not taking the time to cross the dot.
Yeah, but based on that argument, you could also get the people who I don't know, get fast food 4 times a week or shopping at Walmart frequently, and then put the data together and say they're more likely to be criminals. So let's hang out in the Walmart parking lot.
They're all
it's a dangerous slope to go down.
They're all larger conversations, but the fact is that a traffic stops are dangerous. Would you agree, Justin? That's just a fact. Whatever the larger sociological, however you want to dissect it, it is a fact that when you pull someone over for whatever big or small reason, it is a dangerous, potentially perilous situation for both the person being pulled over and for the police officer. That's just a fact.
I think sometimes what can maybe go askew is a lot of times citizens who are well-meaning, and I see this in my social group, will compare other countries. Well, this is how England does it, or Japan does it this way.
Sure.
And those countries in some ways are comparable to ours, but in one way they're not. We have a much more violent criminal population.
And we got guns everywhere.
We have more guns than people. Yes.
Right.
And size.
Size.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't. Everybody loves to compare America to Switzerland. Have you ever been to Switzerland?
Or Canada?
It's
right.
stunning and it's tiny.
This is a unique situation here in so many ways, and that's why I don't know that we can look to another country and say, well, they did it this way. Can we do it? We've got to figure out our own way, and that is daunting.
And if you look I'm sorry, go ahead, Justin.
But I don't think people recognize how different we are than everybody else, period, just in general.
Yeah.
America is, like you said, it's a unique place. It's a weird place. It's just weird compared to every other place in this world. The freedoms that we have, the fact that we can buy a gun and carry it around with us wherever we go.
And you mean weird in a good way.
Weird in a good way. Because freedoms are usually good things, right? But freedoms do come with consequences too, and they're played out every day in the media. So.
Justin, do you, like you said, you work what's generally the black part of town, and for people who don't know, there's Tallahassee has like many cities across the country, there you'll find an area of town that is more black than other areas of town, and that goes back to history and a whole other larger conversation. So the people you're coming in contact with on your beat tend to be black people, and so when it goes good or when it goes bad, it's for you specifically, it's going to be heavily African American, the interactions that you have. Do you think that policing as a whole, we've had guests on prior who are in law enforcement who say, the inflated numbers for black people when it comes to shootings and police brutality are in part due to the inflated interactions because these are the communities where crimes are happening. And then we've had other people who say, well, no, actually there's more, police are policing these areas more. Crime's happening in other areas too, but they're over policing Black communities. And so of course you're going to get the higher interactions, which then, ups all the other numbers. You have any thoughts on that?
Well, I know in Tallahassee, the majority of the interactions that we had is because somebody called us, not because we went out bothering people.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
My police department, they do not, encourage us to do more traffic stops. I could go a whole year without doing one traffic stop. I'm still going to have my job. Our interactions are almost all because somebody called us in. Whether that was a victim, a suspect, or the next door neighbor who was tired of hearing her neighbor's fight. We were called here, and now we have to deal with this. And was there a second part to your question?
Well, no, not really. That you're hitting on the core of what I'm asking, which is, and illuminating something that's important, which is in these communities where you're policing, there are people who need you there.
Right. Yeah. And sadly, sometimes or a lot of times the callers don't even like us, but yet they realize in that moment that they need us, so they call us.
Right.
It's funny, but that happens. That happens every day. We get called to these incidents, and we politely come and do the best job that we could possibly do, in trying to solve it and trying to find a resolution.
You're like the marriage therapist of law enforcement, except you don't get paid as much.
Right. They say we wear a lot of hats. So,
do you find that in that community there's people are unwilling, if you're trying to get to the bottom of something or trying to solve a crime, trying to help somebody, do you come up against the barrier of people because they don't like you and have been taught or have learned not to trust you? You find that there's a barrier where they are not cooperating with you. You're trying to help them, but they're like, I'm not a snitch. I'm not going to cooperate with you. I hate the cops. All
the time. First, when we're going through projects, I went to a call just recently. When was it? Like 2 weeks ago, maybe. Went in there because, a car was driving around erratically all over the grass in the project trying to hit people. We finally get there. We find the car. It's smashed in on one side. We find out that it hit a pole. We can't find the pole. We asked where the female driver was or is that was driving this car. Nobody says anything. Nobody wants to talk to us. Nobody wants to snitch on this girl who just drove erratically with a whole bunch of kids playing around in the projects. They don't want to tell us where she is. They don't want to tell us anything. First thing I did when I walked in the project was I yelled out loud because there's at least 100 people outside. Okay? They just had a show. So there's plenty of people outside in the project. The first thing I did when I drove up, I got out of my car and I said, does anybody want to talk to me? I yelled it out loud. Nobody said anything. Not a peep, not a word.
Is that because there's a price to pay if they talk to you, or is it because they just don't like you?
I think it's both. I mean, they understand. Depending on what the incident was, nobody wants to be hurt themselves being a witness. But let's be real. In America, it is cool not to talk to police.
Uh-huh.
It's just as simple as that many times. It's just a cool thing to do. F the police.
Mm-hmm. Justin,
talk to them words.
What made you pick your career? You said something like you felt it was a calling from God?
Yep, I do. So I was raised, my mother was a single mother, but I still had my dad in my life.
Uh-huh.
They divorced when I was 5 years old, and I was raised in an all-white neighborhood. I'm a Tallahassee Democrat, all-white neighborhood.
Uh-huh.
But all of the schools I went to were on the south side, on the black side of town, just because of zoning. And I wanted to go to a school anyway because that's where all my family was going to school anyway. But I also played baseball coming up. My mom signed me and my brother for baseball when I was like 6 years old. So that meant I had the opportunity to be amongst whites from the white side of town. And when we would go play those games, I would see moms and dads at the games together. Unlike mine, Unlike my situation, they had moms and dads both at the game sitting down in their soccer mom chairs, buying their kids all of the nice batting gear and stuff like that. Meanwhile, I'd have to go home and go to school with black kids who only had mama. They didn't have daddies. Some of them didn't know who their daddies were. So they didn't have the opportunities that I had because I had a mom and a dad in my life. So that in itself showed me that there's an opportunity to experience both sides of the fence, both sides of the track, that a lot of kids who look like me don't get to see. And because I got to experience both sides of the track, I feel like I'm well balanced. And maybe me and my arrogance again, but I think there's a level of balance in my life that allows me to always try to be fair, but also be stern with kids. So being a police officer allows me, or it gives me the stage that I need to be able to speak to kids, young black kids, white kids too. But I'm gonna be honest with you, I love speaking to young black kids because young black kids, those are the ones who need it. They need that education, and who better to give that education about life and how to live and how to do right than a black male who's experienced some of the things that they've experienced. And one thing about this stage, even if you don't want to listen to me, you have to. And so if you have to, that means I have a responsibility to make sure that when I'm speaking to you, that it's me speaking life into you. So police work gives me that stage. And that's why I became a police officer. And I wanted to be a police officer since I was a young kid anyway.
That's fantastic.
I went off to college, got a little buck wild, but then I came back home in 2010 and got back on the right track because I had a good foundation to come back to. My mother and my father, they created a foundation. So even though I went off to college and got a little buck wild, the foundation was still strong. So I had that to come back to. And then once I came back, I stood on that foundation. And it allowed me. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, Justin. Continue, please.
No, I'm done. You good.
Yeah, I was just going to say, of all the people I've arrested, and I worked on a Safe Streets task force. I mean, the Bureau doesn't arrest as many people as, in general, as street police policemen or women do. But being on that violent crime squad and Safe Streets task force, it was, we had bank robberies and fugitives was most of what I was doing. Mm-hmm. And so you end up arresting a decent number of people. And of every single one of those people that I've arrested, I've always, when I've heard their story, if they'll talk to me, and sometimes they will, a lot of times they will, if you treat them respectfully, and then you're in the room with them, and and when I hear their stories, when I'm honored enough and approachable enough that they talk to me, when I hear their stories, I always think in the back of my mind, I'm surprised you didn't do something like this sooner. I mean, I'm not surprised by the bad actions. They're not bad. These aren't bad people I'm talking to at the core. They've had a life that is just like, holy shit. I mean, I'd probably be robbing banks or worse if I grew up that way.
Right.
So I think it's wonderful when you say about you talking to these kids. And I think it's important for every cop of every color to go to these schools and let them experience, hey, not all white cops are assholes or Scottish cops are assholes either when they're pulling you over. But nothing is better, I think, for a black young man in a predominantly black projects to have life spoken into him the way you just described it. I think that's wonderful, man. Mm-hmm. Well done. You're really impacting the world right now.
Agreed.
I hope I am. I mean, that's my favorite part of the job, being to speak with people, to mingle with people, and just to talk about life. I love when they ask me why I became a police officer, even if it comes from a place of, that was a dumb decision. How could you ever become a police officer? You're a traitor. I still love it, though, because it gives me my opportunity to explain to them. And most times when I explain to them why I became a police officer, the mood changes.
Right.
The mood changes. But it's because I took the time out to talk to them, not speak at them, not yell at them, but just treat them like their lives matter, like they're human, and educate them a little bit.
Right.
People are yearning for the police to educate them. They may not know it, but that's just how it is in America right now. People want to know, but we're not taking the time out to give them what they yearn for.
Wow, man, that is an impactful thing to say. That is a really impactful thing to say. That like kind of wraps up all these things that like Marty legitimately gets frustrated with when he hears celebrities maybe lash out, and in general, you know, Britt and I feel at times like, what can we do? What's going on? We don't. For you to say people are yearning for the police to educate them and explain, but that's not happening at the level it needs to happen. That I feel like that's a statement. That's like a bonding statement. That's the glue that can bring emotional sides together. How do we amplify voices like Justin Reed Hills? You know, how do we lean on police departments to say, can we put this project together that Officer Hill has in mind to get him and his partners into school? You know, there's got to be a way to do that. I mean, shit, Justin, we're all the way across the country. We're in Oregon, right? But it matters here too. You know, I've got a connection with Florida. I've got a connection with Tallahassee. Go Knowles! But
he had to slip that in.
But you know, like I want to help you get into those schools there in Tallahassee and then amplify that voice. You have a vision, and you're doing it for the right reasons. And you've convinced me, man. You were put on this earth to do this job. And I want to help amplify that voice, doing what we're doing right now, right? I'm going to be in contact with you after we do this, and
you may even violate some stalking statutes.
I'm going to stalk you from now on.
I think what we need is a TikTok friend with a lot of followers. Anybody have one of those?
No, but let's get one. Let's get one.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, dude. You were on a good roll there.
I was done. But you know, I want to be respectful of your time, Justin. I know you're going on duty today.
Be safe, buddy.
Dude, thank you for your time. Thank you for your wisdom and the words that you've shared. This went better than I even expected it would, and I was already looking forward to it. But just, man, keep doing what you're doing. Because you're coming at it from the right place.
And Justin, you really represent Tallahassee PD in a positive way. So shout out to Tallahassee PD as well. They've got somebody like Justin on the job.
Thank you, sir. I was a little nervous too coming on today, but it quickly subsided. My nervousness did anyway.
Yeah, no, listen, man, we're pretty casual here, so you're welcome to come back on anytime you want if something comes up. It's
Absolutely.
Just like we appreciate your insight and your time. You're very generous.
Yeah,
I appreciate it. If you need me, call me.
I will, man. Be safe, man, and take care.
All right, enjoy this, guys.
See you, Justin.
Thank you, Justin.
All right, bye-bye. Thank you.
Wow, awesome, huh?
I really am a little bit inspired by that dude and just kind of his vision of what he'd like to do.
It's interesting because I see him as a natural father and teacher who chose policing as his format for doing what he wants to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I've met guys who had the similar experiences he has, and they go into the teaching role to try and work with kids, or the counseling role to try and work with kids. But you can see that he has a desire for that. Yeah. And I thought the one aspect that he missed before education, I think, is respect, which he displayed and showed that he gives to every civilian that he comes in contact with.
Yeah.
And they will not let a police educate them unless they sense that they're being respected.
Right.
So he was saying how he shows that respect first, and then they will listen. And those are hard steps they're hard thresholds to cross for everybody.
Well, and then the question that begs the question: how do we recruit? I've always said.
I was just going to ask that.
I've always said that one of the biggest. I'm all for police reform, obviously, but recruiting and training, they're the keys. They're going to get the Justins out there interested in policing, and this trend towards by some towards demonizing the police, it just makes us more polar. Just the way I called people who have legitimate questions the woke mob, that's my frustration. That's not helping.
Yeah, true.
People have questions, but it's like we've talked about this with gun control. But when I see details of a celebrity lashing out essentially and not even knowing the smallest detail What else don't they know?
Yeah.
And it's so frustrating, and they're screaming too. And that, as a human, I obviously I need to modulate and I need to do the best I can to be enlightened, but it just makes me want to shout back, no, you don't know what you're talking about. Stop.
Right.
And then once they stop screaming, maybe, it's a cycle.
But that's why I loved what he said when he's saying the public is screaming at us to educate them. Like his point of view is not the public is screaming at me because they hate me and so F them, the police are my tribe and my clan. He's saying they're the way they're shouting, they don't even know it.
Right.
They're saying, educate me.
It's a subtext. What I took from him was, that's not what you're hearing on the media.
No.
But people, when they're shouting, they want to know.
But if police can translate that, and it's not easy. Like Justin's, he has a certain level of enlightenment in his approach to the job.
Certainly.
But if the police can translate the shouting to the subtext of educate me, maybe we can start to, right? Instead of people standing and saying, no, you first,
Right.
But stop shouting, no, stop shouting.
Right. But there's not one solution to that. It's going to be time. It's going to be patience from the police and from the community to to put in these sensible reforms and start attracting the Justins of the world and not taking money away from the police, putting it into the right place, not the militarization of the police. I think that's a problem.
That's what everyone pictures.
But putting it into, police, the cop on the beat, interacting with the community in a positive way. And I just love his quote, speaking life to a young black kid. Speaking life into him. So that's the challenge.
If I'm recruiting for a police department, I'm putting Officer Justin Reed Hill front and center. Right. He represents. He really does.
He does. Yeah.